all of the animals act very strange there, and I was absolutely white knuckling it the entire time. Their decisions trickle down and absolutely affect us. So that's why I feel like books like this are really important to read. All right, it is my August wrap up today. As you can tell from the title, we have 7 books this month. No, we have 8. I have 1 audiobook as well, so 8 books this month. It was a pretty good reading month, I'm not gonna lie. I have some, I don't know if I should go as far as to say new favorites, but I think that I do. It's such a mix too, like lots of random genres. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive into it. First up is actually one of my favorites. This is just a literary fiction book. That's how it is technically categorized. It really does lean heavy on the science fiction side, and my only qualm with it was that it actually didn't go even deeper. I think it would have been a 5-star read for me if it had, and that is Natural Beauty by Ling Huang. I love anything that feels a little bit culty, a little bit like, you know, it has this veneer of like beauty and perfection on the surface, but then you go deeper and you find out that actually there's something really insidious going on. That is exactly what this book is. So this was a 4-star for me. It does get kind of weird. I wish it had been even more like Vandermeer body horror-esque than it already was. It does go there for sure. I was like so ready for it to get really, really crazy. So what is it about? We have an unnamed narrator, and she is actually working as a dishwasher because she is a fabulous pianist. Like, she is so talented. That's what she grew up doing. Her parents taught piano. They were immigrants from China. That's how they made their living. But there was this sort of tragic thing that happened in the past, and she feels like she just can't do that anymore. It's like too painful. Somebody essentially scouts her because they actually recognize her, and this woman is like, you are way too talented to be working here. Please come and work at this fancy schmancy like beauty, skincare, wellness store that she like has a hand in running called Holistic. Now this is like a Sephora on steroids for like the bougiest top 1%. And at first it seems like totally great because she actually gets all the treatments and stuff that they do at the store for free. Like, it seems like a dream job, but we very quickly realize that things are not as they seem. Of course, they cannot be as they seem. And I really don't want to say anything more than that, but it does explore beauty, obviously. Beauty being sometimes only skin deep, because she does end up interacting with a lot of people who seem really wonderful from the outside, and then we find out they're actually really, really messed up. Lots of themes around identity, because she is a Chinese American. Like I said, her parents immigrated, and there's some really seedy stuff that happens, just like really icky stuff that has to do with her identity and the way that the store wants her to portray herself, and even some of the treatments that she undergoes. There's a lab where they do animal testing and stuff, and she's typically like, she's not allowed to go there because she's not a white coat. She wouldn't have clearance to go down there, but she ends up down there at one point because like the door doesn't get shut all the way. She ends up at like the owner's house at one point in time, which is a very strange, those are some of the coolest scenes. Very strange house set in like the middle of a forest, and all of the animals act very strange there. It feels a bit like Midsummer. There's some like sky burial stuff in here that's a little gory. It's good. I loved it. If you like anything speculative, a little bit body horror, then you will like Natural Beauty. Okay, next up is one that is not gonna be for everybody. For the right person, you're gonna be obsessed with it. I think if you like Christopher Nolan films like Tenet, this was actually recommended to me by an author, Nicholas Binge. I was on one of his calls, like one of his live interview kind of things in this writing course that I'm in right now. They bring an author on every month or so, and I'd never actually heard of him, but at the end, we were all asking him for book recommendations, of course. And this was one of the ones he said he had just finished reading. Anyway, the book is There Is No Antimemetics Division by Quantum. This person, whoever this is genius. They need to be writing film scripts. So good. This is absolutely bonkers. It very much has to do with time and memory and super highly advanced alien technology. So if all of that sounds like your cup of tea, you will love this. It's actually quite short. I ate this up. I was pretty much able to follow through with it the whole time, which is insane because the story is so A lot of it is so abstract, again, because it has to do with memory, but it's so good. So essentially the antimemetics division is the secret government agency that was supposedly founded in the 40s, not really, just in the book. And their whole like purpose is to gather information about these mysterious beings, these mysterious entities known as anti-memes, and they can't be seen, documented, or even remembered. Like you can take a photo of one and then the photo won't develop, or you can write down a description and then it's like gibberish when you try to read it back through. Fascinating concept. So basically humanity is in this like invisible war with them. This government agency, this antimemetics division, is attempting to protect humans from the very strange, bizarre, alien things that these are. We have two main characters, Adam and Marion Wheeler, and we find out Marion is the foundation's sort of chief executive. So the foundation is like the people who founded the division, if I remember right. And it's really cool. Her husband, Adam, she's trying to like protect by forgetting him, and he has this weird natural immunity to the anti-memes, so he can remember and observe them. There are definitely some body horror elements in here that have to do with black slugs. So if you don't like body horror, you're not gonna like this. But basically, we are in a war against these things, and you are on the front lines with Adam and Marion. And I was absolutely white knuckling it the entire time. I would absolutely read this again, and I'm not someone who rereads books just because I have so many on my TBR. I will absolutely be purchasing everything that this author has. I got this one off Amazon. I just need to hop back on Amazon, I guess, and see what else they have, because they are just absolutely genius. I think it's so clever. It was so good, such a thriller, lots of action, but not just those crazy concepts. They do character development really, really well too. I'm gonna say it again. It would make such a sick Christopher Nolan film if somebody somewhere could share this information with Christopher Nolan. I would love to see this as a film and what he would do with it. So it's very trippy, but highly, highly enjoyable. 5 stars. The next one is, I guess, one that you would call like a political science book, and that is The Great Reset and the War for the World by Alex Jones. Say what you want about him. I understand he's extremely controversial. He's sort of known as like a conspiracy theorist, but he's basically dedicated his life to like reading declassified government documents and basically trying to unravel and understand everything that's very seedy and disturbing about our government and pass that information along to us. I view him as like a civil servant, honestly, because who else has the time or the aptitude to read through all these different documents? He's wrong sometimes because he's literally just making guesses, trying to put all these pieces together, all this information, but like his predictions have been pretty scarily accurate. And this book specifically, which is the only one I've read by him, but I do want to read his other stuff. This book specifically talks about the WEF, the World Economic Forum, founded by Klaus Schwab. He doesn't really have humanity's well-being in mind. Basically, Alex is outlining in I think it was 10 chapters, how the global elites plan to implement this basically takeover of like our current system, specifically our economic system, but also like agriculture, technology. I mean, that's literally why he says like the war for the world, because they basically want to come in and just like redo everything, obviously to their benefit. They're known as the Davos Group, so these are men like, again, Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, all of these people who you've probably heard of, some of them you probably haven't. Basically, Schwab's view is like he wants companies, like big corporations, to serve as a sort of government, which you could argue that they already do, through like their terms of service. Talks about how the globalists harness the media, like legacy media. So if you watch anything at all, like, you know, CNN and Fox and all the big ones, you can be sure that the information that is being pushed to you, no matter if it's like conservative or liberal or whatever, it's being pushed to you by these people, these 1%ers. He does mention COVID. He talks about how that was part of the plan, one of the many things that they have planned over the course of the next couple of decades, to push things out, to basically usher in the new systems that they want us to use. Like the big famous quote that I feel like a lot of us are familiar with is, "You will own nothing and be happy." So you're gonna rent forever. You're not going to own a home. You're not going to own a car. Everything's going to be like rented, which basically just means that we end up becoming super dependent on the government. There's some really creepy things in here. Like Bill Gates is the largest owner of like farmland. Like he owns like 250,000 acres of farmland. Is that not just kind of strange and weirdly disturbing? Like, why do you need that much land? What are you doing, sir? Their decisions, these like CEOs, their decisions trickle down and absolutely affect us. So that's why I feel like books like this are really important to read. Along with my fun fiction, I do try to stay, somewhat aware of like actual things happening in real life. So anyway, love you, Alex. Okay, getting back into fiction. Because I know a lot of you probably turned off for that Alex Jones book. We have a popular one, I think, that's on like the bestseller list right now. I actually got it for my mom because I picked it up, read through it, was like the synopsis, and I was like, I don't know that that's really necessarily something that I would read, but you might read this. And so she was like, yes, I would. So I offered to get it for her for like an early Christmas present. So anyway, that is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This takes place in 1975 in the summer, and it's about a young girl who goes missing. She's just not in her bunk one morning. She goes missing from a summer camp, and she's actually the daughter of the people who own the summer camp, like whose property it is. So we follow quite a few characters, honestly. There's like 8 different perspectives. It was kind of a lot at first, but I do think in retrospect it does give you a really cool kind of like carousel sort of 360-degree view of everything that was happening in the story. So it was kind of a lot, but I appreciated it at the end of the day. It's a good old whodunit, and I don't read this kind of book. I literally just read it basically just out of curiosity. And it was okay. It wasn't like exactly my type of book. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars just because there were some characters in here I feel like we didn't necessarily need to get as many pages of them as we did, because we're nearly at 500 pages. It's like 475 pages. I do like the perspective of Judy. She's one of our main characters because she is one of the investigators on the case. And she's a young woman, and it's 1975. So she is like the first female investigator like in the United States or something like that. So I thought that was kind of cool because she's constantly being underestimated, but she's actually really good at her job. I will say it jumps around in time a lot. I wasn't ever confused because we do get this very clever like timeline on the chapter title pages. But if you don't like that, I don't know that you'll like this because we jump around to quite a few different decades. We go back to the 50s at one point. We're in 1961 at one point. The current year that we're in when Barbara, the young girl, goes missing is 1975. And then there's sort of an added layer of tension because Barbara's younger brother, Bear, also went missing 14 years ago. So it's like very strange that now the second kid in this family, this very wealthy family, has gone missing. So it does explore class. It's mainly just one of those like family tension kind of things. Like you eventually sort of uncover this sort of secret that the family has been keeping, how it's affected everybody kind of in the town. So I sped read it for sure, but that is The God of the Woods. And then quickly I'll mention the like self-help type book that I read this month. I always try to read some sort of like body, mind, spirit type book. I don't always get to it every single month, but I did in August. And that was The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. If you know, you know. It's a book about manifestation, so it's very much one of those sort of like law of attraction, using your emotions to kind of dial into how you're feeling and allow you to sort of like get clarity on what you want in life, and then kind of use that to manifest your dream life, basically. Basically lots about, tapping into gratitude. That's always the biggest takeaway with books like this. It always has to do with having an attitude of gratitude. So that's always a nice reminder. This quote is one of my favorites because it's so short and simple. Whatever we think about and thank about, we bring about. So it's like whatever you're putting your mind onto, like whatever you're giving attention to, if it's good or bad, positive or negative, and then whatever you're thinking about, you're gonna kind of like bring that back to you, which I'm a pretty firm believer in. I feel like stuff like this, law of attraction, that manifestation, all that stuff, it does get a bad rap because it does feel very materialistic. But at the end of the day, most of the books that I've read like this talk about how you need to do like the inner work first and feel appreciation and deep gratitude for how your life is now in order to allow better things to come into it. I feel like in a very crazy, anxiety-riddled world, books like this just kind of help calm me down a little bit. So that is The Secret. And then I did read one for my Reading Around the World challenge. So for the Czech Republic, I read The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. I gave this 3 stars. This was not exactly my type of like writing style. It was a little bit tricky for me to get into. It is not written chronologically. It took me like half the book to figure that out. It's not so much stream of consciousness, but it's like he writes by connecting ideas together. That threw me for a loop, so I was a little bit confused for a good chunk of this. He does a very good job with character though, like character development. So basically we are following 2 couples. One of them, a man and woman, the man is very much a womanizer, and so we get, you know, his life of all these different trysts and one woman after another and that kind of thing. His name is Thomas, but he does eventually end up falling for Teresa, who's just a waitress, normal gal. And so we see how their marriage kind of like unfolds and develops and devolves and all of that. So they marry, but Thomas does keep his mistress, Sabina. She was one of the more interesting characters. I wish that we had kind of gotten a whole novel just about her. I think I would have read something like just from her perspective, honestly. She's a painter. She's a very talented painter, and she just feels very like cosmopolitan, and she just seemed cool. Like she was just like a cool girl. Oh, 1968 specifically is the year that it's set in. And so the Soviets are occupying Prague at this time. And so we have the relationship drama and all that stuff happening. Sabina also has like a partner, so we're following those 2 couples. But in the background, we have this political unrest and obviously the Soviets coming in to occupy Prague. So lots of beautiful ideas in here and beautiful writing. I did really appreciate that. It's quite sad though. It's just kind of a sad book, so do be prepared going in. It's also partially biographical. I figured that out eventually because I was like, why is he inserting himself? Like he literally says I. It's written from first person perspective, from the author's point of view. But it's like a story about these other characters who are totally fictional. So that threw me for a loop as well. That was also kind of what was confusing me, not just the non-chronological like timeline and structure of it. There are some really heavy-hitting one-liners though. It's like really punchy lines like that. So he's very excellent writer. I did like that, you know, even though he was being kind of philosophical at times and it was very abstract, he could kind of distill these like bigger concepts into these little bite-sized sentences. So I did appreciate that. Beautifully written, but 3 stars for me. That was The Unbearable Lightness of Being. Then the audiobook that I read, Chuck Palahniuk's latest, Not Forever, But For Now. So I have my whole Chuck Palahniuk video where I take you through pretty much everything. There was a few that I DNF'd, but for the most part I've read all of his stuff. 2 very posh, very interesting British brothers. They refer to themselves as pre-males, so like preteen boys basically, Otto and Cecil, and they are upholding the family business, which is basically murder. They're mainly killing like their nannies, like tragic things mysteriously happen to their nannies when they mess up. Not a whole lot of plot to report. It's kind of one of those books where it's very much just like they're like almost like a slice of life, like you're just seeing their day to day and like what they get up to. It is a bit graphic. There is a lot of mention of hanky panky, so if you're not into that, then you're not gonna like this, because in true Palahniuk fashion, he does not hold back in terms of like sex and gore and that kind of a thing. There are some pretty on the nose like nature versus nurture metaphors in here. It actually opens with that. They're like watching the Nature Channel, so it's you know, the themes are pretty like obvious. So it is a horror satire, the latter of which Chuck does very well. Satire is probably like a good chunk of his oeuvre is just like all satire. Lots of mixed reviews on this one. I've seen people who were like lifetime fans kind of like saying goodbye with this book. Like their review was like, au revoir, I've had a good time. And then there's a lot of reviewers saying, you know, anybody who gives this a 1-star review just didn't understand it. Oh, you know, it went over your head. For me, it was a 2-star. I was still interested to listen, like it wasn't a DNF, but it wasn't one that I was like really thinking about getting back into when I wasn't reading it. Maybe just because the characters aren't likable at all. They really don't have very many redeeming qualities because they are you know, murdering people after all. But then they're also kind of like just like brainwashed into it because they live such like insulated lives, and their grandfather kind of like, they're following in his footsteps, kind of like he's kind of like teaching them how to do this. And so you almost kind of feel like bad for them in a way because they're so cut off from normal people and normal society. They are just like to the point where they're like delusional, basically. There is a twist. I will say I almost missed it because it's actually in the author's note at the end. It's not actually in the text itself. So if you don't read the author's note, you're not going to get the twist in this one, but it is a big one. It's one of those that makes you rethink the entire novel. Like you see it like through a completely different lens. So make sure if you're gonna listen, catch the author's note at the end. Very, very, very important. Another sort of tragic, satirical, what did I just read kind of book. I will continue to read Polinick for sure, but he's just not for everyone. Not everyone can stomach him. That was not forever, but for now. All right, last one is another newer one. It's a contemporary book. I think it actually came out in 2020, and that is Leave the World Behind. So we're following a middle-class white family on vacation. They've rented this beautiful home. Part of the listing on Airbnb said, leave the world behind and come to our, you know, very fancy big brick house, all very modern, this awesome like vacation rental. But very quickly, that sort of illusion of like the perfect summer vacation is shattered because the homeowners arrive back home. There's like a creepy knock on the door. It almost has like a horror novel kind of start to it. It's literally the homeowners, and they're like, we were just in New York. There's a blackout, so we're coming here because there's no electricity or anything. So there's obviously immediately some really intense tension and awkwardness because the family who's renting it is like, we've paid for the week, this is our space, like this is very weird for you to come back. The vacationers don't know if these people are even really who they say they are. This very much delves into our addiction to technology, our addiction to our phones. There's no internet, and then there's no TV. The TV has like the blue screen of death, so they can't actually access any technology. So it definitely makes you kind of self-reflect as the reader as the characters are going through the same thing. Like, who would you be in that situation? Like, are you going to be the protector? Are you going to be the person who panics and freaks out? The entire setting is just the house. So it has that very kind of claustrophobic sort of feeling of being, you know, isolated in your home, as we all were in 2020. And I'm not going to lie, I did start thinking about, as I was reading it and as I was kind of finishing it up, I was thinking a lot about like, I kind of understand preppers and like the mindset of like anything could happen at any point in time. So like, it's not a bad idea to be prepared. There are some creepy things that happen throughout, and because it's written from like a third person omniscient sort of perspective, we do get commentary near the end of some things that are happening outside of the house. And so you can obviously jump to several different conclusions about what might be happening. So you are led down, you know, a particular path, even though the answer is not directly stated. This was a 4-star for me. I did like it. It did make me reflect. I do like a book that kind of makes me think. 4 stars for me for Leave the World Behind. All right, my friends, that is all she wrote. That is the 7 physical, 8 total books that I read for the month of August. Let me know if you've read any of these. I definitely recommend this one probably the most, for sure, if you're just looking for like crazy, insane fiction that's gonna keep you interested the entire time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.